Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Item 7, therefore, the new leader's statement. Leader, I call you to make your statement. As you know, members can make comments as well as ask questions after the leader has made his statement. Thank you. Mr. Oliver.
Mr. Chairman and members, I would like to thank those who have nominated me and those who have elected me to lead this County Council on behalf of the people of Surrey. It is a great honour, and with it comes a tremendous responsibility to serve this wonderful county and its many communities. First, can I pay tribute to the fantastic achievements of David Hodge. He has been a passionate advocate for Surrey and its residents throughout his time as a councillor and as a leader. We should all recognise the outstanding contribution he has made to us as members, to the residents of Surrey and to the wider local government sector. David, thank you. It is now my task to implement the core strategies members agreed in October, and I'm determined that we will deliver on these. This Conservative administration has a clear mandate from this Council, and we are united in wanting to realise our vision in 2030. My commitment to the principles that underpin these strategies is unwavering. No one should be left behind. We will take a fresh approach to working in partnership. We will help people to help themselves and others, and we will involve and engage our residents more fully in the development of our services. We are embarking on a journey of change, renewal and innovation, supported by our officer team, led by our excellent Chief Executive, Joanna Killian. Joanna has ably started the work of transformation, but it's now time for elected members to play their part. Our first objective must be to make Surrey financially sustainable once again. We need to reshape our services around the changing needs of our communities, making them fit for purpose both now and in the years to come. To do this, we will need to be creative and embrace new ideas to meet the aspirations of those we serve. My commitment to you and to the people of Surrey that I will get the finances of this county in order can be clearly demonstrated from my decision to create a post of Cabinet Member for Finance. Ensuring that sustainable budgets are central to our thinking. I'm delighted that Mel Few has agreed to take on this new and important role. Equally, to support me in delivering our plans, I'm pleased to announce further changes to the Cabinet. Some of the roles have been revised, others refocused, and new dedicated roles to finance and property have been introduced. I have asked Colin Kemp to serve as my Deputy Leader. As shown by the last two holders of this post, it is an essential role, and I'm delighted that Colin has agreed to take it on and work alongside me. I would like to welcome Julie Isles, Sinead Mooney, Matt Furness, Natalie Bramall and Wyatt Ramsdale to the Cabinet. Can I also thank John Fury and Claire Curran, both of whom have served this Council with distinction for many years and who are stepping down from the Cabinet. Jeff Harris leaves to take on the chairmanship of the Adult Social Care Select Committee. Mr. Chairman, making this Council fit for purpose is not going to be easy. The officers have already been looking at how we can meet the needs and aspirations of our residents, and the changes that will be required are an uncomfortable prospect for all of us. But it is now time for us in this chamber to take the responsibility bestowed upon us by our electorate and start to make the hard decisions that must be taken. I wish there were an easy solution. We know that in an uncertain world, Surrey residents look to us for certainty and continuity, but budget pressures and changing expectations mean that we cannot go on as before. Change is difficult, for we walk a tightrope between respecting the past and adapting to the future, where resources are even tighter. Despite the pressures we face, we must make our children's services outstanding. My administration will be looking at all measures available to achieve this under the direction of Mary Lewis, supported by our Director for Children's Services, Dave Hill, and his team, ensuring that we achieve the best possible outcomes for every child and family in Surrey. We must provide early support to our ageing population to help them have a better quality of life for as long as possible. We must work to become a high-performing council once again, and the welfare of our residents must be at the very heart of this organisation. We are committed to playing our part, but we cannot secure a successful future for our county on our own. We must continue to develop more effective relationships and partnerships that are open, proactive and productive. Perhaps in the past we have been too internally focused, for all the right reasons, but this might have led to us missing the outward view, scanning the horizon and anticipating the future on our residents' behalf. We will be needing all the help our partners in the voluntary, charitable and faith sectors can give us, and in turn we will look at how we can be better partners to them. We need to ensure that alongside every essential decision we have to make, we are all satisfied that we have made every possible efficiency within our services, looked at every opportunity to generate money from our own assets or created new homes, and investigated every possible avenue of winning new funding or using new ways of providing services with our partners. Our residents, as we all know too often, do not distinguish between boroughs and districts or us. We are all Surrey to our residents, and we must work seamlessly in partnership as we look to fund our frontline services. When people need our help, they are often faced with being passed from pillar to post. That must end. We need to have people on our side, but as long as such isolation and disjointed service delivery continues, they will not be. It is vital we have our residents' backing, because it is them we are here to serve, and upon whom our future success relies. We will forge a new working relationship with central government, in which we will work together. Whilst we must work to unlock funding and secure policy reforms that help us adapt to changing needs and pressures in our communities, I also want us to offer our support and assistance to them in finding solutions to problems felt across society. We will work with them to bring national agencies together with us to help solve the issues we face around health, skills, employment and infrastructure needs in Surrey that we alone cannot solve, yet if achieved will enable us to do more for ourselves. We will work closely with all businesses across the county, large and small, to support them in providing jobs, to make them an integral part of our communities and to make Surrey the place to do business. We have disenchanted our residents and partners for far too long, and understandably many have switched off. Without their involvement, policy decisions risk moving further away from the public's needs and wishes, and I will be dedicated to increasing positive engagement and involvement to prevent this. We also need to empower the public and give them a genuine role in the development of our communities. It is not right that any organisation should assume it is better placed than the public to decide the future shape of individual communities. And Mr. Chairman, Surrey County Council needs to return to Surrey. For too long, the emotional connection to a community has been taken for granted. For 50 years, we have not been close enough to our residents we serve, and we all represent. I have therefore asked the officers to start the detailed planning for the relocation of the people in this building back into the county of Surrey. Natalie Bramwell will take the lead role in locating a suitable new home for us. I've asked her to make recommendations to this council within the next few months, with an expectation that we will have vacated County Hall by 2020. Our workforce deserves the best possible working environment to undertake their duties, and that is simply not possible here at County Hall. Indeed, it is important to recognise that despite the current challenges we face, Surrey County Council staff always distinguish themselves in their dedication to public service. More importantly, they're committed to Surrey public service. And but for their dedication, we would face many more challenges today. It would be understandable if the changes that they have experienced over recent years had left them demoralised. I want to say that under my leadership, we will redouble our efforts to recognise their skills, develop their careers, and ensure that they are a part of our future success. We are all rightfully proud of living in Surrey. Surrey is blessed with tremendous natural assets. We have thriving villages and towns, booming businesses, and a strong economy, an abundance of diversity and a rich culture, glorious countryside with the Surrey Hills, a history of innovation and design from Brooklands in Weybridge to the University of Surrey. We have so much to be proud of. It is essential that we protect the heritage and character of the county, as well as creating more trust in Surrey County Council to lead our community. Each one of us is a guardian of this county for as long as our residents allow us to serve them. We have many challenges ahead, but we are not alone. Others are following a similar path, and I'm confident that we can learn from our peers in local government, draw on their experience, and take our rightful place as one of the leading counties. To the opposition, I ask you to work with us as well as to challenge us. And to this end, we will begin an immediate review of the role of scrutiny as well as democratic governance. You need to be involved at an earlier stage of policy formation, as all our residents' views are equally important. But in return, you must engage and not sit on the sidelines, for you have a key role to play. We need to work together for a Surrey that we and all our residents can be proud of. The bottom line is that we have a difficult task ahead of us, but we know what we have to do. It is now time for us to roll up our sleeves, stick to the job in hand, and make sure we see it through. The current challenges are not all for Surrey County Council. They are challenges faced by our communities, and as such, the solutions must be designed together with businesses, residents, staff, members, other councils, voluntary, community and faith sectors. We are stronger together, and we will secure a bright future for Surrey together. Finally, Mr. Chairman, we must have humility, an ability to look backwards and learn from our previous mistakes so we can adapt and ensure the future is brighter, that the future provides our residents with the services they need, and work together to ensure the services we deliver are of the highest possible quality. We have a steep hill to climb, but with a commitment by us, all of us, to shape services for the future, with the commitment of our partners to combine our collective strength, and with the commitment of our residents to play their part, we can and will succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader. This item is now open for questions and comments, and I call Chris Bottom.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Oliver, for a positive, inclusive and hopeful vision for the future of this council and for our county. Many of the things which you've said are ones which I would agree with. Our residents are disenchanted with politics in general, and with many of us, it is a fight not just to achieve service change, transformation and balance. It is also a fight to sustain the confidence of our residents that we are trustworthy and competent. And it seems to me that those are two key words which we need as a council to focus upon being. We need to be trustworthy because we need to be transparent, and what we say needs to be the truth. I choose one example only, and that is that I find it very difficult to explain to residents how a consultation about closing children's centres will actually help our early help offer and support it. I'm not saying it won't. I'm saying I don't understand it. I can't explain it to residents, and we need to be much more clear in explaining why we're doing what we're doing. The same applies to our library consultation. It's very hard for me to explain to residents what we're seeking to achieve, and I think we need to be, in our engagement and our positive approach to partnership, if parish councils as well as districts and boroughs, we need to be very clear what we're looking to achieve and be completely transparent about it. Mr. Oliver talks positively about the vibrancy of our communities, the wealth and richness of Surrey. But he also knows that there are many in our communities who are left behind, who are using and relying upon food banks, and who are genuinely struggling. And he knows, and I know, that this council needs to address the needs of those residents as much as it does of the vibrant businesses which this county enjoys. We know that many struggle with housing. We know that many struggle to find rental accommodation which is comfortable and which can support a proper family life. This council, as the previous leader has indicated in the past, has a fundamental role in securing proper housing for its population. And in looking positively at a property portfolio in the Cabinet, I'm delighted to say that I hope that we will see more clarity and transparency around our property portfolio, that we will use our property portfolio for the benefits of residents, and we will work hard to support housing for those in need and for those struggling. It seems to me that working with central government at the moment is challenging. I can't see how you would engage with it. It is too chaotic. But out of that chaos, this council could be a community leader of some distinction. And it is that community leadership, backed up by trustworthiness and competence, that I would want to see this council champion the needs not just of our residents, but as Mr. Oliver has said, to champion the role of local government and governance in particular. It seems to me that we're taking a step forward in adopting our new financial regulations, which look to me very much like a sit-for playbook. I'm very keen and very confident that those will put our finances, or help to put our finances, on a much better footing. But I want to return to a theme which I have raised in the Chamber in the past, which is that I believe our residents want to see competence in terms of enforcement. If a pothole is repaired, they want to see it stay repaired. They want to see contracts enforced. They want to see the County Council in its performances standing up for residents and the quality of their environment. They don't want to see their council tax pound frittered away or wasted in inadequate, inappropriate or poor contractual performance. I praise the staff too, and I welcome their commitment. I find them supportive, I find them intelligent, and I find them sharing the commitment that Mr. Oliver says to the residents of our county. I find it slightly surprising that we would want to take their catering away from them. I find that surprising because I think we should nourish and cherish our staff. But nevertheless, I understand the financial constraints under which we're operating. But at the same time as operating to deliver a financial balance, we must demonstrate our compassion, our concern, and our commitment to the well-being of our residents. That means making sure that we get proper mental health provision for our young people and for our adults. They are severely let down at the moment, and that cannot continue. And for all the passion that he has shown in his introductory speech, and the passion of the previous leader, we will continue to support you with that passion to secure the best deal for our residents, never forgetting that under the surface of a wealthy Surrey is a deprived, broken and vulnerable population that more than ever needs our support. I will ensure that this group, my group, that under the leadership that I will hope to provide, will always be positive, always be constructive, and always seek to engage. We will never sit on the sidelines. I don't believe we have, but I promise you we never will. Mr. Chairman, I wish Mr. Oliver every success in his new role, and he carries with him my very best wishes for his success.
Thank you, Mr. Bottom. We haven't got the red light today, but I let you carry on because it was excellent. Mr. Spence.
Thank you. In 3 minutes without a red light, you really do have to cut to the chase. So congratulations on your election. As you know, my vote was with Colin Kemp, so I'm delighted that he is the deputy. But just like I know Colin is a decent chap, I hear from those who know you that you're a decent chap. And like all administrations, you will attempt to do your best, just like David Hodges and John Fury's administration attempted to do their best. You didn't adopt a cabinet of all the talents, which means you've missed out by not having the residents and independents, the Lib Dems, Labour and the Greens in on the ground level. I mean, you asked that we should be in at an earlier stage of policy development. Well, you can't get in any earlier than if you put us in cabinet, and you haven't done that. You've stuck with the Conservative administration. Most people in Farnham North don't care whether it's a Conservative administration, a Lib Dem administration, as long as it fixes the roads, as long as it keeps children's centres functioning in a positive way. And if you want us not to be on the sidelines, you can't have us on the sidelines. Last year, you wouldn't bring us in on the prioritisation setting process, and this year, you wouldn't bring us in on the cabinet. Now, as an opposition, if we don't have the same kind of access, say, to the staff, the vision that Joanna Killian's taken forward with her executive directors, who I've got a very great deal of faith in, but that they then put that vision through a blue prism alone, and not everything is bad about a blue prism. Wyatt, with his blue prism in Farnham, we work with Jeremy Hunt on trying to sort the traffic problems. But, you know, we've got our British racing green prism in Farnham residents, and there's a yellow prism, and there's a red prism, and there's a green prism, and you will get better decisions if the very good initiatives that are put forward by Joanna and her team are filtered through all of those prisms. And if you're not going to do it in cabinet, by putting us in cabinet, then unfortunately you're going to see the situation that you haven't mentioned today, which was there is one more of us and one less of you, because Amanda won the by-election in Byfleets. And she won that for a reason. She won it because people, if they don't see the change, will shift with their votes. So, 60 to go, unless you involve us through our prisms in your work, and I hope that you will. I know Colin will, and if people are right and you are as good as Colin, then that will be positive for the future.
Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Leader. Well, interesting to follow Stephen on that. Certainly, I congratulate the new leader, and he's got a tremendous task ahead of him, and he's set out many of the issues. Certainly, the children's service must be up there. I applaud his decision to put a cabinet member on the finance area. I think we have a very capable member there who will keep us on the straight and narrow. I think it's interesting he's decided to keep the cabinet portfolio to his own and brought in an assistant or deputy to him. There's no doubt in my mind that the property is key to a lot of what we're doing, key to the police portfolio, which is what we have to do. It's key to many of the savings, and it's involved in many of the decisions about closing or changing services. And in terms of accommodation with extra care, it's absolutely vital, so you need to keep an eye on that. I applaud you for doing that. I think it's interesting you've decided to keep the health portfolio to your own. Clearly, that's a major partnership out there, so that's an interesting decision. Look at that. I would welcome being more on the ground floor. I would welcome earlier discussions on issues. I think we were disappointed, picking up on Councillor Botton's comment about the consultations that have gone out, because I think when I speak to residents about filling them in, they're all biased, they're all pointing one way, they're very difficult to answer in a wholly objective manner, except putting your comments in the block at the end. And I think you do need to engage with us, and we're happy to do that and ready to do it early in the new year, if not sooner. I welcome the comments on looking at the role of scrutiny, which would be part of that. I think I will leave my comments there. We will have dialogue, and I look forward to it and serving the residents of Surrey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll get the leader to make some comments at the end of the questioning. Mr. Robert Evans.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I add my congratulations to those of others to the new leader on his appointment to the distinguished position of leader of Surrey County Council. A former member of this council, speaking to me recently, said that he didn't think Councillor Tim Oliver was fit to be leader of Surrey County Council, but he didn't distinguish because he added that none of the other candidates were fit to be leader of Surrey County Council on the basis that anybody who put his or her name, and there were no hers, but anybody who put his name forward to be leader of Surrey County Council could not be of sound mind. That it was an impossible, it was and it is an impossible task, and I pay tribute to former leader David Hodge and his erstwhile young assistant, the former deputy leader, Councillor Fury, for the way they addressed the impossible task. Because we are at a time of huge government cutbacks, and I would say a period when central government does not take local government seriously, and as you all know, because the former leader told us month after month or meeting after meeting how much the council was being underfunded, and we were unable to provide all the service that we'd want to. That being said, the services have to be provided, and the new leader has said he wants to make the council financially sustainable, and of course we would all share that concern, and we want to make the council very much fit for purpose. Many of the people I speak to in my area, and I'm sure the same is true for other colleagues here, feel Surrey County Council is remote. They don't, almost to a man and a woman, they don't understand the system of two councils, and when I put it to them, two tiers of councils, they do not feel it is a good use of resources, a good use of money. They don't care which council mends the roads, as somebody else has said, or provides the services. They just want the services provided. And that may be something else that the new leader wishes to look at, whether it's a good idea having two or sometimes three tiers of councils with all the additional expenses and bureaucracy that entails. I would also ask the leader to look at the business of consultations, because too often, to me and to other people, a consultation seems to be a roundabout way of trying to justify serious cutbacks. I hope if there are consultations in the future, they are going to be taken seriously and the responses are going to be listened to. So I'm sure the new leader will take that on board. I also would like to make a suggestion to him that I welcome the opportunity or the suggestion that he's going to look at the whole position of County Hall, this building, wonderful building as it is, with its history. You've had enough? Oh, I see. I was looking for the light, but it's obviously not there. A suggestion, if I may, is that you perhaps take yourself on a roadshow round the different boroughs to meet ordinary people, invite them to come in and have a word with you in your capacity as new leader, consult the people, and trying to do everything we can to repair the relationship that we have with our residents. Above all, I hope you will do a better job at running Surrey County Council than it seems the government are doing at running the country at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Kington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall that it was in 2009, when I was first elected, that the concept of an elected leader was introduced into Surrey County Council. I think at the time it was planned as a coronation rather than an election, and when I mentioned before the meeting that I wanted to speak on the matter, I was told I could not. As you can imagine, I politely asked why, given that the individual to be elected was to have a pretty significant set of powers, and I was told, okay, I could speak for 3 minutes, subsequently reduced to 2 minutes when I stood up in the chamber, and subsequently changed back to 3 minutes when I politely stood my ground. So I spoke in my usual positive manner, making a few well-meaning observations about the parlous state of the Council's finances and failing policies. But I don't think the man charged with proposing and praising the new leader anticipated either my presence in the chamber or the words in my speech. And I can't quite remember what Mr. Hodge said, but it was along the lines of, sit down, you know nothing, don't speak again for 10 years. Well, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I've heeded I have heeded those wise and encouraging words these last almost 10 years, saying very little and learning my trade and knowing my place. But I think it's time once more for me to comment on the election of this leader, this time with the full knowledge that the Constitution is on my side. So, Mr. Oliver, may I congratulate you on your election? May I also congratulate you on your choice of cabinet members, not just who is in, but also those who are still in. However, unfortunately, just like in 2009, you are inheriting a pretty poor state of affairs. Dissatisfaction in the countryside over parking charges, dissatisfaction in our towns over the switch off of our streetlights, a council in court over its send policies, and a cabinet member at odds with head teachers over her money grabbed for their funds. A children's service in crisis, worse according to your own officers than even Ofsted said, and a foster care regime under scrutiny since the Parsons Green bombing. Now we face the pending closure of children's centres, recycling centres, possibly libraries, as we launch into the umpteenth transformation of council services. And the last two budgets and the financial processes of this council strongly criticised by SIPFA. I note, Mr. Chairman, that the manifesto produced by the Conservative candidate in the recent by-election contained not one example of a positive policy success of this council. And that is a real challenge for you, Mr. Oliver. You have a difficult task. For the residents of Surrey, I hope you succeed in turning this council round, because that can only be to the benefit of all in our community. And you can rest assured the RA Group will continue to challenge you constructively, and we will be looking to see if your priorities really are aligned to the priorities and aspirations of our residents. And perhaps, Mr. Chairman, after a period of quiet, I will report back on that matter in 10 years' time.
4 minutes for you, Mr. Kington. I've been more than cooperative. Mrs. Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. I firstly would like to congratulate Tim Oliver on being elected as the new leader of the Council. That's great. I also pay tribute to David Hodge for his commitment and dedication in his role as the previous leader of the Council. Turning to Tim Oliver, I ask that you do everything possible to make the Council more responsive to Surrey residents by making the Council a listening and learning Council. In particular, in relation to the current consultations, I request that the views of Surrey residents are genuinely taken into account when decisions are made. Can you give such an assurance? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Watson. If there are no more questions, I call the leader to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, members, for your comments, which I think broadly were positive anyway. I'm not going to respond in detail. I've set out what I hope we will do, and I think I've tried to set out the tone of the future administration. At the end of the day, actions speak louder than words, and we will start on moving forward this afternoon. I do just want to pick up, though, on Mr. Spencer's comment. Maybe he missed what I said. The involvement will be at an earlier stage for all groups and through the select committees. So we will look at the select committees, how they operate, but we will also look at the general democratic governance. So what decisions are taken by Cabinet, what decisions are taken by Council. So I would ask you to look closely at that piece of work as it goes forward, and I'm sure you'll contribute. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. And members, an electronic copy of the Leader's statement will be circulated following the meeting. Moving on to item 8, members' question time. Members, we've had notice of 14 questions. The questions and responses have been sent to members before the meeting. 5 minutes were permitted per question for supplementary questions. These must be framed as questions, please, not statements, and be relevant to the original question. Question time will be limited to 45 minutes, where we should be able to get all 14 in, hopefully. No red lights today, but I'll have a little look at you if you're going on too long, at which point I'll finish the question we're on and close the item. If there are any questions not covered during the 45 minutes, a written answer has of course been tabled, and members can follow up with the relevant Cabinet member outside the meeting. So let's start with question 1. Helen Clack, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for his excellent response, and hope that we will continue to work together as this consultation develops, and I have no further supplementaries to state.
If there are no other supplementaries, no response. So moving to item 2, Robert Evans.
Thank you very much. Can I thank the Cabinet member for her response, which I do appreciate, but I wonder whether she thinks it would be a good idea in future if Surrey County Council was represented at the National Police and Crime Panel Conference.
Mrs. Turner, are there any other supplementaries? Mrs. Turner-Stewart.
Thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Evans. However, I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on how the panel actually conducts its business, but I'm sure that they will take on board your comments. Thank you.
Question 3, Mr. Elwood.
May I thank the Cabinet member for her response, and yes, I do have a supplementary, Chairman. My question was very much at operational level. The Cabinet member's response, which I've discussed with her, and thank you for that, is at a strategic level. Now, part 3 of my question still really applies insofar as I fully understand that we cannot have the nice-to-haves anymore, only the essential services. And essential services for children in this case will be the more deprived, if I may use that expression. And I have a lot of those in the council estate that I live next to. So my question, coming back to point 3, is when the dust has settled and the changes have been made, whether I agree with them or not is irrelevant, I understand the reason, what thought will be given to how the folk, the less well-off folk, their children, what thought will be given as to how they get to those places where there are centres, notwithstanding I appreciate we're moving away from so many centres. Thank you.
Are there any other supplementaries? Please could we have a response? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elwood, for giving me the opportunity to stand up in my new capacity, and I must say I'm looking forward to taking on the challenge of working with officers to embed a new practice model in Surrey of family resilience. And the concept of family resilience is putting support around families to support them where they live and to support them in keeping their children safe within their own homes wherever possible. In order to move to the family resilience model, we'll have to change the way we do some things. And the Commissioner, who is still with us, Trevor Doughty from Cornwall County Council, who's going to be watching what we're doing and has already reported back to the Minister about us, is strongly supportive of the plans that are in place to introduce a new model of social work practice, which is known as the family resilience model. It is always difficult at a time of change and uncomfortable for members. We will be looking at the responses to the consultation, considering what people have said about the changes that are being proposed, and we'll be back to you in future meetings with the results of the consultation and how we're going to move forward. So thank you very much for raising the issue.
Thank you. Question 4, Mr. Botton. Do you have a supplementary?
I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her reply, which is very reassuring, particularly her commitment to to seeing that school governance is prioritised, and I thank her for that reply.
Thank you. Question 5. Mrs. Goodwin, you have a supplementary.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to thank the lead member for a comprehensive response. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But I don't have any supplementary questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 6. Mrs. Watson, do you have a supplementary? No? Thank you. Question 7. Mr. Cooksey, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank the Cabinet member for her response. However, it doesn't really address the question, so I would like to ask 3 questions. 1, could she tell us who was responsible for the final decision? Which Cabinet member? Secondly, what was the consultation process undertaken with members of staff? How was that carried out and how was that undertaken? And finally, why were members of Council consulted when all of their suggestions and proposals were totally ignored in the final decision?
Any other supplementaries? No. Mrs. Morley.
Thank you. Members may like to note that the decision was listed on the Cabinet papers of the 25th of September under item 7, the monthly budget monitoring report, Annex 4. Unfortunately, this decision shows the seriousness of our financial situation and is part of the £40 million cuts to counter the £15 million overspend in the SEND budget and to try to prevent the using up of reserves this year. A saving that is within this authority's control and does not impact directly on residents is one that we're going to act upon swiftly. I would like to assure members and staff that the alternative options have been arranged and will be reviewed after implementation. Who made the decision? It was the full Cabinet at that Cabinet meeting of the 25th of September. There was staff consultation, and that was the consultation that was required. Members were informed, and feedback was received, and alternative arrangements were made for members where appropriate. And I hope that you feel that those answer your questions.
Thank you. Question 8. Jonathan Essex is not here, but I invite any other supplementaries from any other members. If not, we'll move to question 9. Mr. Botton, do you have a supplementary?
I thank the former Leader of the Council for his reply. In view of the awful situation that the Prime Minister is in and the positive relationship he's hitherto enjoyed with her, is he likely to write offering his sympathy?
I think we'll take that as a statement. It should be a question, but we'll move swiftly on to number 10. Mrs. Goodwin, do you have a supplementary?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. Question 11. Mrs. Watson, do you have a supplementary? Question 12, moving on to. Mr. Essex is not here. Members, do any of you have a supplementary? No. So moving on to question 13. Mr. Botton, do you have a supplementary? Thank you, Mr. Botton. And Mr. Essex is not here for question 14, but again, any other members have a supplementary? No. So that's the end of question time. Indeed. There will now be an additional 15 minutes for members to ask questions of Cabinet members based on the previously circulated Cabinet member briefings. These will be taken on a first-come, first-served basis, and there will be no supplementaries. So I call Mr. Witham.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Could I ask the new Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Kemp, with congratulations to him and to Councillor Oliver, on their new roles. But could I ask Councillor Kemp to discuss with his successor with responsibility for highways something under the winter preparedness section, and that is something that some of my residents and parish councils have said to me they regard as fairly basic, and that is the dreadful state of a lot of our street signage in terms of speed limit signs and warning signs. Many of them are filthy and almost not fit for purpose. To be helpful, I will give him the two answers that are not acceptable. One is that this is something that can be dealt with through local committee funding, because if there is no revenue funding, they can't. And secondly, that it's something that local highways allocation funding to members could deal with. I find that not acceptable, because I think that it should be something that is done systematically across all 11 districts of the council for the whole of Surrey, and not be reliant on individual councillors to seek action on individual signs. It should be something that is basic, and it is a matter of safety as well as winter preparedness. Thank you.
Can I have a response, please? Thank you. Mr. Harrison. Oh, just one second. Mr. Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. I know you've already sent the question through to the new Cabinet member on the same issue as well, so I am aware of that. I already know it's in his inbox ready to be responded to. We do look after the signs, but we look after the statutory signs. There are a lot of signs within the county which are not statutory, and the safety aspect comes around the statutory signs. They are cleaned and they are maintained. But there is a lot of signs around, as I said. There's a lot of parishes where currently looking around signs within their own areas and actually decluttering and removing some of the signs. You know, we have a form on the website that parishes are engaging with, and in the west of the county and on the east as well. A lot of the parishes are engaging in this because actually too many signs makes them ineffective. So as well as cleaning, there's a point of decluttering going on as well. But happy to take that forward. You are right, the local members, where there are non-statutory signs, can engage with the system and have some of them cleaned. But we have the financial challenges we have, and we must use the money as wisely as we possibly can.
Thank you. Dr. Povey.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask about the Transport for the South East, which at the moment is a shadow body. Longer-standing members will remember we've had many attempts at regional bodies over many years, and in order for this body, the Transport for the South East, to become a statutory body, we'll have to put a proposal identifying the types of powers and responsibilities that it would be having. So could we please be advised as to what powers and responsibilities we would be seeking?
Thank you. Response, please.
As Council will know, the shadow transport body for the South East was incorporated nearly 18 months ago now, and it was paid for out of the reserves of all the county councils and the boroughs and districts that were involved in it. However, the work has been so successfully led by Keith Glazier from East Sussex County Council that government gave us £1 million to continue. Now, the powers that you would ask for as a transport body are still in the melting pot. But as a starter, we are looking at Transport for the North East, which is already a legislated body, and we will use those as a guideline, adding in the context for the South East as it moves forward. It is something which is being put together. It will be delivered, and hopefully delivered within the next 18 months, where the legislation will allow Transport for the South East to actually understand and bring forward to government the requirements of the South East, long overdue in terms of infrastructure and transport policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Forster.
Thank you, Chairman. During Mr Goodman's meeting with South Western Railways later this month, would the Cabinet member agree to highlight that it's not just the failures on Monday the 19th of November, but today's and many other days, sadly at least once a week, and demand a better railway service for our commuting residents? Moreover, please could the Cabinet member in particular highlight that we need a better delay repay scheme, and ideally one that works automatically. And that is obviously possible with season ticket holders. And finally, regarding Crossrail 2, is he aware that the Transport for London group say that the business rate retention scheme that was meant to fund Crossrail 2 is now going to be earmarked to fund the extra costs of Crossrail 1? Please would the Cabinet member agree to write to the government and TfL objecting to that?
Thank you. Response, please, Ms. Goodman.
Yes, I will be meeting actually the Chief Executive on Thursday, and I will bring those items that you brought up, because I think it is time we had a better rail service in Surrey. It's been appalling for some time. There were some improvements, and what really did upset me last month was when on that Monday, and I had emails from various members informing me of what had happened, I did not formally get told by the railway service until 3 days later. I was learning all my stuff on the phone. On the internet. So we do need to improve the communications to us, but we also need to improve the service to our residents. As for Crossrail 2, it is a very complicated issue. Crossrail 2, you've seen the issue only this week, which you've just brought up. The Crossrail 1, after being told it was going to be online and budget, and it was going to open up on time, now it's several £billion overspent. And as you quite rightly say, the levy that they were putting on is now causing an issue. I'll take that issue away, if I may, separately examine it and discuss with officers our right response to it, because this council has made it very clear that they support Crossrail 2. We need Crossrail 2 because what it will deliver other train services right across Surrey if we get Crossrail 2. So very supportive, but let me please take that away and examine it and come back to you personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a question for the Cabinet Member for Children. I received an email encouraged to sign a pledge on the way in about children in care. I haven't done so, and I would like to. I'm quite prepared to do so, but I want to make it meaningful. And in reality, I would like to understand whether senior officers, in fact mid-tier officers, sign a similar pledge. I'd like to understand how reporting back on the delivery of that pledge is being brought into effect. And frankly, with that in mind, I could then meaningfully, if that's reasonable, understand it and sign it. And I would like future reporting back on that specific pledge to make sure that my role is acknowledged as a corporate parent.
Thank you. Have a response?
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. It was really a privilege this morning to be standing with the children and young people who are the children's rights apprentices in the County Council, who are employed for a short term by the County Council after their experience of being in care to help us to deliver the services for children in care that they really want. And our apprentices have done a fantastic job of talking to children who are currently in care about what their priorities are. Those are the priorities which are on the board that you have seen outside and which most members have already signed today. And what we're saying on that board is that we promise to listen to your priorities and to build our corporate parenting strategy around the things that are really important to you. So it's good to see appearing on there, as well as skills for life and having a really good, comfortable place to live, somewhere you really feel at home. Fun. Fun is one of those things, and it's of course really important if we're going to deliver the kind of childhood that we want for our children, the children for whom we're corporate parents, that we make the element of fun really important in their lives. So the promise that we're making is that we will build our corporate parenting strategy around the children and young people's own priorities, and that we'll do everything we can to deliver on those. The way that we will report back on our success is through the Corporate Parenting Board. We've done a big refresh under the leadership of Claire Curran of the way the Corporate Parenting Board works. We've had a lot more focus amongst members of all groups represented here on meeting with children in care, meeting with foster carers, meeting with practitioners to hear about what we are or aren't doing well in order to deliver on these kinds of promises. And we will be continuing with that work, reporting back into the board, and the Corporate Parenting Board will be able to tell you, will be reporting back to you honestly and seriously how we're doing on these promises, and we'll hear the voice of the child in that report back as well, because our children's rights apprentices, our Children in Care Council, all their voices are being heard more and more in the Corporate Parenting Board to make sure that their lives reflect the aspirations that we have for them. I hope that's given you some reassurance and you'll feel able to join in with signing the board today. And a member mentioned to me when I was going around trying to encourage people to sign that he or she didn't personally feel that they could sign because they didn't have any influence over what happened to our children in care. And I felt saddened by that, because everybody's got the opportunity to influence through the people who are currently on the corporate parenting board, or to volunteer to be on the corporate parenting board, or if at any time you wish to become more involved in the services that we're delivering for children in care, please see me as a new Cabinet member, and I'll make sure that you do have the opportunity to become personally involved in some way in the work that we're doing to support children who are growing up in the care of the Council. Thank you. Oh, I will have the board at the end of the meeting if anyone would like to sign then. I would be only too pleased to see you in the Great Hall afterwards. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. I'm going to indulge. It's going to take rather longer than 15 minutes, but the meeting is moving at a nice pace, so I've got 7 more questions. Mrs. Isles.
Thank you, Chairman. It's simply going back on a subject that we've already covered, but it was the appearance of transport signs, and to commend the work of one of the parish councils within my division, East Horsley Parish Council, who have a village task group and a community-led initiative employing a high-tech solution of a bucket of water and a squeegee.
Mr. Robert Evans.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member for Community Services if she's read, I'm sure she has, the article in the Surrey Advertiser last week that says that the fire service needs to make major changes, and it lists a few things there, and I wonder if she can comment on the contents therein.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Evans. As I have reported on a regular basis to this Council, the fire service is under a very significant transformation at the moment. We are investing £900,000 over the next 2 years into generating and expanding the leadership programme. We have new recruits that have been coming online since April. The recruitment process is well underway. We've had recruits from October and further recruits starting in January, so we'll have 44 new recruits by March. That's an uplift of 10% on the current workforce. You are aware we've got the prototype electric fire engine that's come to visit Surrey, and Surrey was selected out of all of the fire services in the land. We were even chosen over London Fire Brigade. We've had new PPE, which you're aware of. You asked a question at the last council meeting. So I think the evidence is there that Surrey County Council takes the support of Surrey Fire and Rescue Service extremely seriously and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tim Evans, then I've got Mrs. White, Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Cooksey to conclude. So, Mr. Tim Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for my friend and fellow Robin supporter, Mr. Goodwin. They must get better soon. And also probably for the leader, congratulations to you, Mr. Oliver, on your elevation to that position, and good luck with it. As chairman of the Pension Funds Committee, my committee will know perfectly well that we get a lot of complaints or questions with regard to climate change and how it's going to work. And in particular, I've seen evidence that suggests that that we're going to have wetter winters, sort of a flood-type wet winters, and drier summers. With that in mind, and bearing in mind that I'm also the divisional member for Lower Sunbury and Halliford, and Lower Sunbury is regarded as the kind of sink or sump by the government to drain the River Thames as and when it overflows. Could I ask both of those gentlemen, members of the Cabinet here, what they are going to do in order to persuade the government to do more with the Surrey Relief Scheme in the future, and to suggest that they encourage the government to take this seriously so that we don't all get flooded?
Thank you, Mr. Evans. It's not on his statement, but who's going to respond to that? Mr. Goodman.
The Thames scheme, as we know, is an important scheme to our Surrey residents. And I would pay compliment to David Hodge, who has worked tirelessly for years and years to get this through. And he will continue to work and watch what we do, I'm sure, in the future with the Thames scheme. And if we don't make it work and we don't get it up and running, I'm sure he will be coming and asking questions to this council. Look, it is very complicated. It's a huge amount of money. All I can say at this stage is that the MPs and David Hodge has been working really hard this last few weeks particularly, but we cannot say anything at the moment because it is still with the government to make some decisions on what could happen. We desperately want it to happen, but what we don't want is just to resolve the Thames scheme. We want to look at the whole of Surrey, because water won't just affect the Thames, it will the whole of Surrey. We want to find solutions to improve the flooding in the whole of Surrey, and that's what we're working on. I cannot make any more announcements today because it's a lot more work to do, but I hope sometime in the next few months we might be able to say something that gives some assurances we will make the improvements that you quite rightly pointed today.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Thank you for taking that one on the hop, as that wasn't part of your statement. But we'll proceed with Mrs. White.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, can I start off by paying tribute to Mel Few for his role as Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care. It's been a difficult one, and he has done it extremely well. He and I both have a long history on adult social care, so I want to pay tribute to that. Congratulate him on his new role. The words frying pan and fire spring to mind, so good luck. And as he hands over to the new Cabinet Member, could he please stress to her the need to get on with the Care and Support project, which has, I'm afraid, taken too long already. It's an important use of the Council's assets, and also, importantly, will provide for people in this county. It's part of our caring for our residents. So please could he stress to her how important it is to push that forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Few.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you very much to Councillor White, because over the 9.5 years I think we've been associated with adult social care, she's kept me on the straight and narrow. When we talk about accommodation with care and support, I'm terrified to look at Councillor Harrison, who keeps on reminding me of when we're going to do something. And as I leave this portfolio with scars on my back for no progress yet, it certainly is on the top of the agenda with my successor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I note that... sorry.
Sorry, Steve. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question, please, and I would like a response from old, new member, whoever it may be, who has a responsibility. Over the last 2 weeks, there have been 3 roads in my division that have been completely resurfaced. Aren't I lucky? They have cost over £200,000. They are 3 roads that make up 1.7 kilometres of one road, which is the main designated ambulance and police route from the town centre to the Royal Surrey County Hospital. There's been a very good job done. All the works were carried out at night time, hence maybe it was a little bit more expensive than elsewhere because it is a busy through road. However, this morning, and I would like to know from someone how I am now meant to explain to my residents, now they've got a nice new surface, that was only completed last Thursday completely, that there are going to be 3 sets of works taking place this coming Thursday. 1 in each section, stop and go, in operation, and sometimes we can get away a little bit by saying, well, it's utilities, and they are a law unto themselves, which we know they are to a certain degree, however, they have to have our permission. But unfortunately, these works are going to be carried out by Surrey County Council. So I would like to know how I'm supposed to respond to residents when they see this brand new road, 1.7 kilometres in length, and it's going to be in 3 different places, works carried out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Kemp.
Matt, look forward to this. My first thing to do is to apologise to you and your residents, because I don't find that acceptable. Don't know what's happened. All I can do is ask you to talk to me afterwards. We do have a case with utility companies where this happens, and we can go to them. But our own team doing it, I'm at a loss for words, and that's really unusual. So, but please do give me the instances, the roads, and I will take it away, and I will definitely come back with a response for you and for your residents.
Thank you, members. And actually, as a lawyer, Standing Order 9.3 says that these questions should be on members' statements only. I will permit it at for this meeting because we're moving nice and swiftly, but I won't in future. Final, Mr. Cooksey, you're on.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies for jumping the gun earlier. I note that Mr. Goodman, in his report, indicates that he's received 2 petitions on CRC closures as a consequence of the consultation. Can I inform him that he will be receiving a 3rd one against the closure of the Dorking site, together with a response from Moore Valley District Council, which unanimously opposed the closing of the site at its meeting last week. Could he assure us that all of those objections will be taken very seriously when he comes to make decisions about the consultation early in the new year?
Thank you. Response, please, Mr. Goodman.
The simple answer is yes, but the longer answer is that this is a consultation. We want people to tell us what they think. Once we understand what they think, we also know we need to make some changes, both in terms financially and the way we run the CRCs. All those issues will be taken into account, as well as I've said in my report, that the government are about to announce a new strategy for waste. This will also be taken into account. The CRC this time is very complicated, and we will take, as I promise you, all those issues into account. I have read some of the comments, and it's when people just say we don't want it closed, and I understand that, but we've got to find out if we don't close it, what do we do? Do we actually make the funding in other parts of the CRC service? So all that will be taken into account, and you can hold me into account when it comes to Cabinet early next year.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Moving on to item 9, statements by members on local issues. Notice of a statement has been received by Dr. Povey. Dr. Povey, you have 2 minutes for your statement, and the statement's put without discussion or reply. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wish to make a statement in support of Cranley Community Recycling Centre, which is under threat of closure for the 2nd time within a year. I would put it to members that there are 2 special circumstances around this particular CRC. One, the distance to an alternative, which is at Whitley, would vary between 7 and 9 miles according to where you live within my division, which is well beyond the recommended limit of 3 to 4 miles from DEFRA. The second special reason for Cranley is the huge increase in population that's occurring now and over the next 2 or 3 years. The population of Cranley itself will increase by 1/3. If you include Dunsfold Park, which is actually closer to the CRC than a lot of Cranley, it would actually double over the next 2 or 3 years. So to be closing it now seems to really not make any sense. I did, however, put down a question at the Environmental Select Committee last week, and I thank the Chairman and the Cabinet member who was there and the various officers who were there, because I felt if I was asking you not to make a particular saving, then I should come up with 2 ideas for how you can do it differently. And I would call members' attention to the recycling rates across the boroughs and districts in Surrey. These are the curbside recycling rates, which vary from 44% to 62%. Now, if all districts and boroughs recycled at 62%, because recycling is cheaper than waste disposal, we would actually save somewhere between £3 and £4 million a year. So that's one way of avoiding the closure. The other is, again, coming out of that discussion, which was a very good one at the Environmental Select Committee, was to look at Suffolk County Council, which has in fact privatised some of its recycling centres, such that they're run not under contract by the council, they are fully private, and as such they can charge for residents to do their recycling. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Povey. Moving on to item 10, original motions. There have been no original motions submitted by members. Now, I've been here on and off for 25 years. I can't remember that. So, moving swiftly on to item 11, the election of committee chairman and vice chairman. Nominations were circulated yesterday, which you should have all received with the supplementary agenda. And I therefore call the recommendations included at the end of the recommendation papers. that the members listed in italics in the published report are duly elected as chairman and vice chairman of the specified committees as shown for the remainder of the council year 2018-19, and to elect chairman and vice chairman of committees of the council for the remainder of the council year 2018-19 also. Are we agreed? Thank you. Moving to item 12, the establishment of a joint health overview and scrutiny committee for Sussex and East Surrey Sustainability and Transformation Plan, page 19 of the agenda. I call the leader of the council to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm aware that Dr. Grant Duff wishes to speak on this item, but I just want to make a couple of observations to pick up on what Nick Harrison noticed during my speech, that I will continue to chair the Health and Wellbeing Board. The board is being reviewed, revamped, enhanced, and its membership expanded because of the importance that it has in terms of the importance that local government has in delivering improved health outcomes. We have an oddity at the moment in that we have 3 STPs effectively, East Surrey being one of those, Surrey Heartlands being the main one. So it's important that what we do when we set out the 10-year health plan, which we will be doing in early 2019, that plan covers all of the residents in Surrey, irrespective of the NHS boundaries. So this overview and scrutiny committee will be important in terms of making sure that there's consistency between what happens in East Surrey and what happens in Surrey Heartlands and Frimley. So I'm happy to move the report and also to confirm that the appointments to that board would be Chris Botton, Bill Chapman and Julie Grant Duff.
Thank you, Leader. And you've mentioned Dr. Grant Duff in dispatches. Dr. Grant Duff.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members will remember that we are also members of another joint health scrutiny committee with South West London authorities. So I wanted to draw your attention, it is in the report and the rules of procedure, that the power of referral to the Secretary of State will remain with this authority, that is, with the Health Integration and Commissioning Select Committee that we have in this authority. And that power will remain in regards to this Health Scrutiny Committee, Joint Health Scrutiny Committee, and also with regards with the Joint Health Scrutiny Committee we have with South West London. So just to remind members and to reassure if you have any concerns that the powers of referral to the Secretary of State will remain with this authority. Thank you, Chairman.
I don't see any other comments, so we'll move straight to the recommendations. 4 recommendations on the report. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Item 13, the appointment of an interim monitoring officer. I call the Leader of the Council to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This is proposal to, well, first of all, Sarah Baker leaves the Council at the end of next week, I believe, actually. So we wish you every future success, and thank you very much for all that you've done for this council over the many years that you've worked here. That leaves a gap, and therefore it's proposed that Rachel Crossley be appointed on an interim basis whilst that position is recruited to full-time.
Thank you, Leader. Don't see any debate on that, but let's agree if we can. The recommendation is that the County Council appoint Rachel Crossley to act as interim monitoring officer for Surrey County Council with effect from 21st December 2018. Are we agreed? Thank you. Item 14, report of the People, Performance and Development Committee. I call the Leader to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. PPDC reviewed its terms of reference and is now making a recommendation to Council for inclusion of those redefined terms of reference as part of the Constitution. I believe they were discussed at length on the 7th of November, so I think that should be pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Kington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst I welcome the new terms of reference with its focus on a more strategic role for PPDC, there is a key role for the PPDC which is missing from the revised terms of reference before this Council. The terms of reference are very clear that the PPDC is responsible for the appointment of senior officers. In fact, over the past few weeks, I've made regular visits to County Hall as part of the appointments panel to set up to reshape the senior leadership team going forward. I've also been attending PPDC meetings in which redundancy payments have been agreed. However, and whilst the PBC will continue with its role of appointments under the new terms of reference, it will have no remit to take a strategic monitoring role of the costs of all those permanent and interim appointments. And that is just plain wrong. At a time when virtually every other aspect of this Council's budget is being scrutinised and monitored, the overall costs of senior management pay is not. One committee of this Council has to have oversight of one of the most important cost centres of the Council's budget. And it has to be done if we are to be seen as being open and transparent in senior management pay. Councillor White raised this matter at PPDC, and the reaction from the ruling Conservative group was almost as if she suggested cancelling Christmas. We were told select committees can look at individual department salary costs within their terms of reference, or you can find the information on the Council website, or individual salaries over 100k are published in the annual payment statement, or senior directors and heads of services are charged with ensuring their HR budgets remain in the relevant budget envelope. But note, no reference to any body or committee having a strategic monitoring role of senior leadership pay across the Council. It certainly is an issue for my residents who, rightly or wrongly, believe that County Hall is full of too many highly paid officers. But I can't dispel that concern. No member can, because up until now information on the total spend on top pay is not something that is actually done by this Council. But things have changed in this Council in terms of leadership. And I now note that the HR brief appears on Councillor Morley's area of responsibility. Perhaps she will be more willing to listen, and can I suggest to Councillor White that she and I try again, perhaps at a private meeting with the Cabinet member, to gain agreement for the committee to have a monitoring role on the costs of leadership pay, including interim appointments and redundancy costs. After all, Mr. Chairman, that is a far better way of dealing with this matter than members putting down regular questions on this topic or even resorting to freedom of information requests.
Thank you, Mr. Kington. I don't see any other questions, so let's move to a response from the Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. This Council is not involved and should not be involved in the recruitment of staff. That is the role of the Chief Executive. She is the head of paid staff, and it is for her to employ those people and to set their pay scales. There is a clear dividing line between what this Council has responsibility for and operational matters such as that. Clearly, it is our responsibility to balance the budgets and to make sure that that happens. And we will, in that context, keep a close eye on salary scales without question. But I don't think, we've had this debate at PPDC. I understand the point that you're making, but at the end of the day, I see that as an entirely operational matter.
Thank you, Leader. So it's recommended to include the PPDC terms of reference in the Constitution. Are we agreed? Yes. Thank you. Item 15, Financial Regulations, page 39 of the agenda. I call the Leader of the Council to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. As members know, this was discussed at the last Cabinet meeting last month, and the regulations are, I think, very clear. I think Mr. Bottom's already picked up on the point that these pretty much reflect CIFA, so hopefully members will be happy to approve them.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Harmer.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I wanted to talk about... sorry about the croak, I thought. Large frog. I wanted to talk about the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, which is an annual document which historically has been looked at by Audit and Governance and then proposed to the full Council on an annual basis, but also with a review just by the Audit and Governance Committee half-yearly. and in fact comes up on tomorrow's agenda of the Audit and Governance Committee if anybody really wants to get excited about it. The proposition is that it doesn't really need to come to full council, but rather that it should be determined by the Audit and Governance Committee, and the argument is that those people have been specifically trained on the issue of Treasury management. Now, actually, the training for Treasury management, I'll say that right at the beginning, is very interesting, and I think it is, and we're in the habit of conducting it, or having it conducted for us, at the beginning of each financial year, and so that's a useful facility. So the proposition here is that it should be determined by Audit and Governance Committee, but that the Council Overview Scrutiny Committee should have the power to scrutinise it if it thinks fit to do so. That's fine. What I wanted to draw attention to was in paragraph 9 on page 41, well, yes, page 40, 41, 41. It says appropriate training will be provided for all members of the Audit and Governance Committee. It does seem to me that in the event that the Council Overview Scrutiny Committee wishes to engage in this, and it's something I shall discuss with the Chairman in due course, that it would be appropriate for them also to have the training. I think otherwise there's a risk that people who don't have the training and therefore the understanding of what the principles are behind what our officers do may criticise our officers unduly and without proper respect, possibly, depending on how they feel. So I'd like to suggest that we amend the paragraph 9 on page 41 to add in where it says provided for all members of the Audit and Governance Committee, say, and all members of the Council Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Personally, I would make it mandatory for anybody who's going to get involved in any of the discussions about these matters. As it happens, at the moment, pretty well all of, I'm not sure if it's 100%, but certainly the considerable majority of the members of the Audit and Governance Committee have had that training, and if it was felt at a later date, and it's something we could consider, that we might want to make it mandatory that people who are going to make decisions or even debate on the matter ought to have had the same training. But I leave that to others later on.
Thank you, Mr. Harmer. If there's no other questions, I'll just explain why I enjoy members coming into my room for my open door policy. This morning, David came in at 8 o'clock this morning. We discussed this at length, and he's made some excellent points. And I've agreed, subject to Council agreeing, that the final sentence of paragraph 9 should be amended to read appropriate training will be provided for all members of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Corporate Overview Select Committee. There's no need to go in the recommendations, but I think that's something that is very sensible. And I would draw your attention, members, to the entire recommendations in this report and ask, are we agreed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harmer. Item 16, review of the special responsibility allowance for deputy cabinet members. Report of the independent remuneration panel. Page 63 of your agenda, members. At the AGM in May, members agreed that the independent remuneration panel be invited to review the special responsibility allowance for deputy cabinet members and report back to council. And the report they prepared is at item 16. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the report is self-explanatory. I just wanted to add a couple of things, though. As you'll have seen, members will have seen, the deputy cabinet members have now been allocated to a specific cabinet member and will have specific responsibilities within their area. And I've asked them to produce an update report, just as the full cabinet members do, to this council, so that members can be satisfied that those roles are valid and are adding value to the overall governance of the council. The report recommends a review in 12 months. In fact, there will be a review next May, and we'll see how that is working out. But other than that, Chairman, I would recommend approval of the independent acceptance report.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Since you now have an open door policy, I'll be in there tomorrow at 8 o'clock discussing whether West Ham got a snip of a bargain of Marko Arnautovic for 25 million from my team, Stoke City.
No need for discussion, I'll agree that. Now, proceed with your question.
Thank you. No, really, I wanted to speak on the role of these deputy cabinet members. They were originally called associates when they were first introduced 7 or 8 years ago. I opposed the introduction of these cabinet associates or deputy associates at the time, and I still do, and so therefore I'm afraid I shall not be able to vote in favour of this motion here, or the item here. I said then, and I still feel the same, that the leader, whoever the leader may be, should pick people who can actually do the job. The cabinet members should be able to do the job. It's a full-time job, more or less, and they should be responsible for that. And so therefore, the outgoing leader, said as part of the report to the Independent Remuneration Panel that he would be naming up to 4 members. But of course, it doesn't have to stop there. It could be as many as 10 new members. So that would be a cabinet of 10 plus another 10. And one of the things that was most dismaying, I must say, was before the end, so 18 months ago, before the end of the last council 4-year session, 51 members of the Conservative group of 60 received an SRA of one sort or another for doing something or the other. Chair, vice chair, local committees, scrutiny committees, etc. That, in my mind, is patronage, paid patronage. We hear with central government there's 150 members of Parliament who are on the government payroll, and they are expected to be loyal. We haven't got quite 51 here at the moment, but we could be heading that way again. Who's to say the new leader will not need up to 10 eventually? What's changed since last October, when the Independent Remuneration Panel stated that these roles were not valid, were not needed, and there should be no allowance, SRA allowance paid towards them? I can't see what's changed very much, to be quite honest with you. And so, therefore, I shall be not supporting this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Leader, do you want to respond? Oh, Mr. Hodge.
Chairman, I wonder if the member actually read the report, because I thought it gave very clear definitions of benchmarking, which is one of the things I asked the IRP while I was leader to take into consideration, to look at other councils, clarify it. And it's very interesting that 18 of the 26 county councils actually have deputy cabinet members, and the 8 that don't are much smaller councils. By definition, there's a lot less work to do. Surrey County Council is one of the top 5 authorities in the country, and therefore the work itself will reflect that. I thought that the panel was very assured when I had a conversation with them, and they were very pleased that we had agreed that we'd restricted to 4 deputy cabinet members. I know the new leader has already agreed that. So I actually do believe, and having seen the work that they've done in the past, there is a genuine need for this. At the end of the day, it is a great bonus for a leader to be able to look at deputy cabinet members and say whether or not they're in the right place to move on to the cabinet. I think it works really well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. If there are no other questions, I'm going to move to a vote. And as outlined in the report, the IRP recommends the special responsibility allowance for deputy cabinet members is set at £10,000. This reflects the decision agreed at the County Council meeting on 22nd May 2018. All those in favour, please raise your hand and press the button yes.
You have to press it.
Thank you. All those against? Thank you. Abstentions? Thank you. 52 yes, 14 no, 4 abstained. So that is carried. Thank you, members. Item 17, Scrutiny Annual Report 2017-18. I call the Leader of the Council to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to move this report. As members will see, it summarises the key activities of the Select Committees for 17-18 and highlights the priorities going forward. Having already announced that there will be a full review of the role and functionality of the Select Committee and Scrutiny Committees, it may well be that those priorities change, but I hope that the report will come back to this Council early in the new year.
Thank you, Leader. I don't see any questions, so it's recommended that members of the Council consider the report. John O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chairman. I know I'm the only obstacle between now and the beautiful sandwich lunch that's being prepared imminently, so you're going to have to wait 2 minutes. Chairman, it's quite the reason why I hesitated was to see whether any other member wanted to speak on this item, and the fact no other member did want to speak on this item tells volumes about the current inadequacy. Chris, lunch is going to be postponed even further. About the inadequacy of our current system. It's a really quite distressing figure that round about 2/3 of committee meetings did not make a single recommendation. In a sense, Chairman, colleagues, that might be an indictment of us, the 71 who are not members of the Cabinet. And maybe to some extent that might be the case. But much more fundamental, I would submit, is because the committees themselves play such a limited role in the governance of this Council. Now, select committees are not decision-making bodies. The Leader of the Council has already suggested other mechanisms by which we as a Council can make decisions. But select committees still provide a valuable role in policy formulation, in holding the Cabinet and others to account. Question to all of us who are on select committees. It's a function of the system. How many of us were really involved in the transformation, in the business plans that accompanied the savings earlier in the year, a few months ago? My committee wasn't involved. To our intense frustration, I see the chairman of my committee agreeing with that. The limited role that these committees play in our council is something that leads to poor decision-making eventually. So I entirely endorse what the Leader of the Council says. We do need to have a radical reform of scrutiny. Decisions that may eventually be taken, they ought to come to select committees in the initial stage so that policy input and scrutiny can be made. That's a first step. There are so many others, but until we get this right, this Council will be performing very suboptimally indeed.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Mr. Bottom.
Chairman, there are some major concerns that we all have, I'm sure, about the scrutiny system as it stands. I have confidence in the new leader's approach, and knowing that Mr. O'Reilly will also take a major role in that review, I have confidence in that review. There are considerable members of considerable ability who can and do contribute to the scrutiny of this Council. Many members are particularly talented, and many need to be able to express those talents and bring those talents to bear. In that case, I obviously agree with my colleague from Farnham, who has talked about the Cabinet of all talents. I'm privileged to work for a brilliant chair of the Children's Select Committee, and I believe that she exemplifies many of the strengths of the body of this Council. What I will say is this: we cannot go on every 5-6 months changing the title or the chairman or the terms of reference of our select committees. At the beginning of the last cycle in May, I stood up and said, please can we have some consistency so that we can bring the level of rigour that every member of this Council would wish to see, genuinely challenge Cabinet members and genuinely have a say in policy development. So If the new leader will deliver those things for us, I will be very pleased indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Bottom. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Chairman. I think to some extent it's already been said. As John started, I was already thinking very much along the lines. I mean, what's rather distressing about this report, it talks about achievements and challenges. If you actually read it, it's actually achievements, which there aren't very many, and failures. It is a failure of the system. Everybody's bleating, has already been mentioned, policy development. One of the functions of scrutiny is policy development. I don't see any record of any policy development being done with any of the scrutiny committees within this council. And I think that's a disgrace. I was a scrutiny chairman right from the beginning, back in Mole Valley, right the way through. So I've been on scrutiny for many, many, many years. And policy development is a pillar of its work. I welcome very much the leader's approach of looking at it, and let's see what happens. But I do support the two previous speakers totally, that we need to really get things in at an early stage so all members of the council, whichever party they belong to, it doesn't really matter. They should have the ability to come in and say what their residents want and how those policies should be developed for the benefit of Surrey. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison.
Chairman, very much in agreement. I welcome Mr. O'Reilly's appointment to lead the review on the Conservatives' behalf. One of the issues we will have to face is the question of resources. Either members are going to have to do more on their own account, or there's going to have to be more officers, or maybe a combination of the two. But certainly a frustration is the fact that the Adults Committee only met once since May up until now. There's a deep frustration on behalf, I think, of all backbenchers. The training we've been given, the seminar yesterday, it's a continuous theme of, the 25 usual suspects are there, but we don't really make progress with proper scrutiny. So I support everything that has been said this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Good to hear our DDM across the benches. So it's recommended that members of the council consider the report and comment accordingly. Are we agreed? Thank you. Item 18. I call the leader to present the report of the Cabinet meeting held on 27th November 2018.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to propose recommendations for the Cabinet meeting held on the 27th of November 2018.
Any questions? If not, Cabinet recommends the County Council approve the new financial regulations, approve the annual Treasury Management Strategy Statement to the Audit and Governance Committee, and note members of the Audit and Governance Committee will receive training, Ms. Harmer. Approves the necessary amendments to the Council's Constitution. Are we agreed? The motion is that the report of the meetings of the Cabinet held on 27th November 2018 be adopted. Are we agreed? Item 19, the Cabinet minutes, page 31 of the supplementary agenda. I've received no notification of any questions on the minutes, so meeting ends at 11:45. Merry Christmas, everybody.